Good morning, everyone. My name is Antoine Baillargeon, and I'm the program coordinator here at the Ottawa branch. I'd like to begin by recognizing that the Ottawa branch is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples for their valuable past, present, and future contributions to this land and our country. On behalf of the branch, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's session, which is titled All About Footwear for Walking and a Leg Workout with AIM Fitness. We're joined today by guest speaker Nathan Kwok from Sports 4. He'll talk to us about the importance of picking the right kind of footwear for walking and for taking you through your day. Afterwards, Michelle Bourdeau, older adults fitness specialist and head trainer at AIM Fitness, will take us through a quick leg workout and stretches to help keep your legs ready for anything. Now, I want to give a special welcome here to anyone who is not yet a member of the association. We hope that these webinars will inspire you to join us. And to our members, we hope that these webinars will encourage you to maintain your membership with us. I also want to mention that closed captions are available in both French and English. To access this feature, click on the closed captions button at the bottom of your screen. And to translate to French, you can click on the little arrow next to the closed captions button and then select the translate option. Finally, if you have any questions for Nathan and Michelle, please type them in the chat or the Q&A box, and they'll be able to answer them at the end of the presentation. That's all from me, so I'll pass it over to our presenters. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everybody. As Antoine mentioned, my name is Nathan Kwok. I work for a business called Sports 4. If you'll bear with me a moment, we are going to share a small presentation we put together to help guide the conversation. So here we go. So Sports 4 was a business founded in 1982, as you can probably see on the screen there. It has a long history within the Ottawa community, both with the walking and running communities and for general fitness as a whole. Our specialty has always been, if you have not shopped with us, footwear. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how we do business, a little bit about why footwear is important, both for your foot health, as well as the activities that you're going to be doing. So a little bit about myself, because it is always good to know a little bit about the person who is giving the presentation, I figure. So again, my name is Nathan Kwok. My job actually is currently as a professor in the School of Business, Marketing, and Management at Algonquin College. I also sit on the board of directors for the local search and rescue team, which is a volunteer organization. And as far as my experience within sporting goods as an industry, I have a 15-year cumulative experience. I have worked as Sports 4's general manager, as well as their medical professional liaison. I have also worked directly for brands such as Adidas Group and Puma as well, working as part of their training and activation teams. As far as my fitness and wellness background is concerned, I am a competitive powerlifter at a national level with 2 Canadian national records, and I also run recreationally, and I do a lot of hiking with a search and rescue team. So even though I may not be doing the exact same type of fitness or things as you, I do have a fairly deep background when it comes to being active. So here are some of the opening questions that are going to be guiding this session today. I will also be looking at my time very frequently because sometimes I tend to ramble, and I do not want to go over time because you have a great workout with Michelle planned for later. So first question, what differentiates Sports 4 from other shops? Because there are a lot out there. You'll probably see in the running room, you've seen Sport Checks, you've seen Sports Experts, Foot Locker. So what makes us different? Second question is, how can footwear impact your foot health, right? So people think of footwear as sometimes a luxury item or as sometimes as a something purely for comfort, but like, how does this impact our wellness? How can footwear impact your workout? Because a lot of times we categorize activewear shoes into a singular category, often called running shoes. And we're trying to figure out, okay, like, do I really need different shoes for different activities? What are the differences? And then what are some considerations you should be making when it comes to making your investment in footwear, right? And I'll call it an investment because it does have a lot of long-term implications beyond the initial comfort of just wearing good shoes. All right, so when it comes to Sports 4 as a business, I like to think that we differentiate ourselves by these four foundational elements. The first being a problem-solving experience. So not to say that every customer comes in with a problem, but customers have needs. So in order to meet those needs, there is usually a little bit of a questioning period. And a lot of people are surprised when they're kind of engaging in this, mostly because they're not used to it in a sporting goods environment. But a lot of times people come in with specific sporting needs, specific ailments. And in order to make sure that we're doing our job properly, we will take you through an assessment and a series of questions to narrow down a selection of what could be 100 shoes down to maybe your best 3 or 4 options. Another way that we help narrow things down is through measurement. A lot of times people come into our store and they see the branding device. That is the shoe measurement device that we use, or the foot measurement device. And the amount of times I've heard people say that they have not seen one of those in a long time, maybe years, is astonishing to me. It's astonishing mostly because I cannot understand how I could properly fit you for footwear without baseline measurements. So as much as measurement seems like a given, this is a huge part of our business as well as ensuring fit quality. We also do assessments, not full medical assessments, so I want to be very clear about that. But we do, in addition to the measurements, we will look at foot profile. We will also do things called gait assessments, where we watch you walk and assess the level of pronation in the ankle. And on top of that, we also strive to educate all of our customers. So I don't want you to come in here feeling like you are completely dependent on our knowledge. Every time you come in, if you have questions, we will answer them. If you want to sit down and learn about our process, understand why we do certain things, we're here to inform you about that as well. So at the end of the day, if you are maybe in a city or a situation where you can't access services like ours, you will have a baseline level of knowledge to take care of yourself in certain scenarios. So before we get into any of the really technical elements, so when it comes to the foot health types of activities, we're going to talk about shoe jargon and what it all means. There are going to be a couple terms that we're going to use frequently throughout this presentation, and it's important that you understand what I'm referring to. First is the term midsole. A lot of us are used to things like insoles. The piece that goes into the shoe can add a bit of cushioning, can also add levels of support. But the midsole is really where everything shines. Think of this as where all the cushioning in the shoe is allocated. So if you look at your shoe from the side, you'll typically see a thick wedge of foam. Think of this as the midsole. Now, the next term is stack, and this does relate to midsole. Stack is essentially the level of thickness provided to you in the shoe's heel and forefoot. So how thick is that buffer between your foot and the ground? The drop is in relation is the difference between the thickness of the heel and the thickness of the forefoot, and essentially dictates the level of elevation that the heel will sit in. Something else you might have heard in recent times is the term rocker sole. And rocker sole is essentially a curved element to the forefoot of the shoe that immobilizes the toe and reduces the amount of flexion or extension in the toes. The final term we're going to talk about is also shoe last. And this is a little bit more of a kind of shoe industry kind of technical term. But if you want this in layman's terms, the last is essentially the mold that dictates all the shapes and dimensions of the shoe. If you look at this particular shoe in the image here, and you notice that the toe box is kind of squared shape and it tapers in around here at the arch, all of these elements are actually dictated by the shoe's last. So essentially a mold. All right, now we have all that shoe jargon out of the way. We're going to move into some of the fitting basics. So we talked about measurement. The branding device is the basic shoe measuring device. So when you come into our store, we always start with a measurement. A lot of people come in saying, well, hey, I've been this size for my whole life. And the reason we do the measurement is to make sure that we update some of those numbers. The foot does change over time, either getting longer, maybe wider due to various medical conditions. And it's important that we keep these things in mind and keep these details up to date. And the branding device is going to be one way that we do that. We also will look at your foot profile, as I mentioned before, and that will help us determine what shoe last is going to be best for your foot. So not everyone's feet are going to be the same shape. Some people have a very pointed, kind of slim foot with maybe a high arch. Some people have a very broad foot that's maybe more uniformed, a little bit more squared in the base. And all of these are all of these particular details that we note will contribute to what kind of shoe last we'll recommend for your foot and also your foot needs. Health conditions are considered here, and we will also keep you informed with different brand and design trends as they change throughout the industry. So when it comes down to our measurement, these are all the considerations that we are accounting for. Now, when it comes down to footwear for fitness, I think this is going to be kind of the first thing we touch on, especially since you're going to be getting into a workout later on today. So a lot of times we just categorize activewear shoes such as this, which you see in the right-hand side here. We just throw them into this blanket category of running shoes. Now, when it comes down to picking your footwear, the first thing we need to consider is, what are we actually going to do with the shoe? As soon as if we are just walking, so we think about it in terms of like planes of motion. If I am running or walking, typically a running or walking shoe will be very appropriate for these particular activities, mostly because a lot of these shoes are designed to be, first of all, very well cushioned. So I'll just kind of point out this very silvery kind of layer here. This is the cushioning of a shoe here. Running shoes and walking shoes tend to be better at attenuating shock and absorbing shock. Now, where they do tend to fail a little bit is in terms of lateral stability. So when it comes down to fitness classes, when it comes down to things like badminton, sports like badminton, pickleball, maybe you're playing pickleball, maybe you're playing tennis. When it comes to even weight training, where I'm looking for a degree of stability in the base, running shoes do not actually offer any structure. First of all, up here in the top of the shoe, nor are the foam bases down here stable enough to handle those motions. Some of the risks associated are going to be either like decreased performance in the sport itself or instability in the ankle. A lot of times, people that end up playing court sports, so we'll use pickleball as an example, if they use running shoes, one of the big things that we will notice is an excessive amount of turn in the ankle. So it can be very, very detrimental in that way. Another thing we need to consider is durability of the design of the shoe. Now, because the shoe is designed for linear motion, it isn't accounting for any kind of high friction side-to-side movements. So if you end up using a running shoe for, say, sports that have a lot of heavy lateral movements, you may notice that the shoe will start to break down prematurely. This isn't necessarily the shoe's fault. This is just the basically aligning our activities with the nature of the products that we're purchasing. So running shoes, think about it like this. Running shoes are good for linear motion. Court shoes, so that's where basketball, tennis, squash, pickleball, all of these come into play. Optimized for side-to-side motion because they use higher durability rubbers in the base. They also are more torsionally stiff, so you do not see a lot of twisting or flexing in the base of the shoe, nor do you feel a lot of insecurity in the top portion here. Cross training is a category shoe you might have heard of as well. Cross trainers tend to be a jack of all trades. They tend to handle a little bit of running, a little bit of lateral movement, but nothing overly perfect. They're not perfect at any one of those things. They are kind of okay at everything. And then sometimes you will hear about specialty shoes, which we are not going to go into today. However, certain sports do require very specialized forms of footwear in order to optimize performance. Oh, good. We have plenty of time. This is lovely. All right. Now, one of the, I think, defining qualities of sports for is our understanding of common foot and ankle ailments. Okay. Now, to be very clear, we are not medical professionals here. We do employ some people that are medical professionals on the side. We do liaise heavily with a large network of podiatrists, chiropodists, podorthists, physiotherapists, massage therapists, all these people, but we are not in ourselves a medical organization. However, in order to do our job properly, we do have to have a base understanding of certain conditions. Now, some of the conditions we commonly run into, and some of them you might be dealing with yourselves, are conditions like plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, so tendonitis in the Achilles, tibialis posterior or peroneal tendons, bunions, that's a huge one. Hallux rigidus, which is the limited, or hallux limitus, which is either a immobilized big toe or limited mobility in the big toe joint. And then finally, something that isn't necessarily an issue, but something to note is overpronation. Now, we're going to discuss these conditions in a little bit more depth in the following slides. First thing we're going to talk about, even though it's at the bottom of the list, is overpronation. Now, this is something that is an assessment for overpronation, which is typically something called a gait assessment, is something that has been partnered or paired with running stores since the beginning of time, I think. Now, overpronation is essentially what you see on the very far right here, where we have this excessive inward lean or medial collapse here in the foot, leading to an inward lean of the ankle. What we see here is a bit of an angle here at the Achilles tendon. We see the heel bones start to turn out a little bit, and there looks to be a little bit of instability in the ankle. On the contrary, a more neutral position foot will look something like this, where there's a little bit more stability here in the Achilles tendon at the heel as well. Pronation itself, now I want to be very clear here. We don't want to demonize pronation as a movement. So typically what people see is they see a little bit of this inward roll to the ankle. And for the longest time, there was this desire to stop that from happening. If you look on the left here, we have an example of a shoe that was designed to stop or stabilize this inward lean to the ankle. We call these motion controlled, or some places call them stability shoes. And what they incorporate, if you can see it, is right around here. You'll notice that the foam is actually a slightly different color. Now, this isn't just for decorative purposes. This is actually a slightly higher density foam compound that's used to kind of decelerate the inward roll of the ankle itself. In some cases, depending on how strong the shoe is, this will stop the ankle from pronating in excessively, entirely. Now, pronation in itself is actually the body's natural mechanism for dissipating force. So when it comes down to our assessments, we are very clear about understanding that pronation itself as a mechanism is important for us. In fact, a lot of the ailments that we're looking at in the next few slides will actually relate to some people that have higher arches, no pronation in the ankle at all. So it's important to kind of differentiate the nuance there. When it comes to overpronation, however, just because the rolling motion, that inward rolling motion, is a natural occurrence, does not mean that there cannot be issues associated with it, right? So when it comes down to, let's move on to the next slide. Plantar fasciitis and tendonitis, so essentially inflammations of the tissues that line either the base of the foot or the tendons, can also be exacerbated by overpronation of the ankle if there is a lot of tight musculature. So one of the most common ailments we deal with would be plantar fasciitis, or people that are dealing with Achilles tendonitis or tendinopathy. Typically, that means the plantar fascia is the first one. We'll talk about that first, is a band of tissue that runs from here at the calcaneus, the heel bone, all the way up to the metatarsal heads here. What happens is sometimes that band can come into tension. That band is also helpful when it comes to propelling us forward when we're walking and running. But sometimes if the musculature is tight, we can have inflammation in these areas, typically at the heel area, right? Now, when it comes to footwear, I should be very clear into saying that footwear is not actually the solution to your issue. However, it is part of the rehab process. Typically, when it comes to plantar fasciitis or anything affecting the rear foot, so it could be an Achilles tendon issue as well, it means we're having trouble lowering our heel to the ground. There's a lot of tension, typically in the calf muscle area. When it comes to footwear with a higher rise or a higher drop, like we mentioned earlier, so a higher lift to the heel with good cushioning and good structured properties, can often be a helpful means of addressing a lot of the discomfort and pain associated with plantar fasciitis and Achilles tendonitis, right? So this is kind of where footwear starts to become part of this overall solution. We also want to make sure that when it comes down to our footwear, and this is going to apply to all these different foot ailments we're addressing today, is to ensure that we're not crowding the feet or crowding the toes, right? So we're going to talk about bunions next. And this is a good example of why we do not want to crowd our toes into shoes that are too tight. Now, aesthetically, I think a lot of us are used to a more pointy shaped shoe where there is a bit of a taper and conical shape to the forefoot. This is inherently not very healthy for our feet. However, the majority of the industry designs their shoes this way. So we're kind of at a loss here. We have to kind of work with what's available. Now, bunions are one occurrence that can be worsened by tighter fitting footwear. Also, if we go back to the initial slide and you see the way that the tendons travel here, this fascia band here travels, crowding the toes also can create tension here in this band. So it's important to allow our foot to be able to splay very naturally while still having the shoe hold us. Bunions can look and present themselves in different ways. They can be hereditary, but again, to constrict the foot and continue to force these toes inward will only worsen the issue here. So again, when it comes to bunions, we are very specialized at looking at and assessing, first of all, width and dimensions of the foot and understanding how much space we're supposed to give you to, first of all, give you a shoe that functions properly, but also alleviates pressure. This will also allow your foot to move very naturally and function very naturally. I thought I actually had another slide related to this, but essentially, when it comes down to levels of thickness in the base, levels of elevation, shape, and dimension of the toe box, Sports4 really specializes in helping people address a lot of these needs and ailments. Just because there are very few places that understand how to fit footwear properly and what the implications are for ailments such as these. I think I'm actually finishing a little bit ahead of time, so I want to open up the floor to questions here. And I also want to make sure I'm not intruding on Michelle's workout time. So if you have any questions, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen here. I will take a little peek at the questions that sit in the chat here. Okay. So Helen is asking, do you use a women's branding device to measure for women? Yes, there is a women's specific brand device, but a lot of the measurement devices are actually unisex. So they'll have two different scales of measurement that we're able to use on one singular device. However, yes, branding devices for women specifically do exist, and we do have them in our store. But the reality is, if we can get a device that has both measurements, it's a lot easier for us to work with. Anne Marie Griffin. How do orthotics affect all these measures and cushioning? So when it comes to orthotics, typically the rule of thumb is to avoid corrective shoes. So the very first slide I showed you about overpronation, there was that block of foam. Typically, and I don't want to say all the time, there are very few blanket statements, but typically we will not want to stack the support of an orthotic on top of supports that already exist in the shoe. Because what that can do is it can actually overcorrect and force the ankle outward. Now, there are some podorthists and podiatrists that will actually combine the two. They're not wrong, but they have also accommodated their orthotics or made adjustments to the orthotics to account for these differences. Orthotics are going to be a more perfect, and they're essentially in a perfect mold of your foot. So when it comes to supporting the ankle, when it comes to addressing the holistic needs of an individual, an orthotic will be far better. However, an orthotic can only function as well as the foundation it's placed on. So a lot of times you'll have your podorthist, your medical professional say, hey, why don't you go to these, and they'll probably list off a few different stores you can go to, and they'll make suggestions for certain footwear. This is because if you go to, say, a less expensive shoe that has no torsional stiffness, no supportive properties, the orthotic itself can only function as well as the base. So it's important for them to recommend good shoes to go with the orthotic in order to make sure that all the supports are optimized. Orthotics can also sometimes change the fit if they are more, we call them accommodative orthotics. They tend to be thicker, more cushion focused. They tend to bump people up about a half size or so when it comes to their sizing. However, this is not a universal rule because not all orthotics are designed the same. In fact, we are seeing a huge trend in 3D printed lower profile orthotics that seat right on top of the existing insole. and these don't tend to change the size or fit in any meaningful fashion. Anonymous attendee. Anonymous. Instead of bunions, I have a left baby toe that sticks out. What can I do for that? Since wide shoes don't help me with arch support. Interesting. So this is actually an interesting question. I think this is going to come down to what you mean by the wider shoes not providing the proper arch support. The problem with footwear, because I was telling you earlier, the toe boxes are very conical in shape, right? I'm going to see if I have an example. Actually, I don't have time to find an example. I'm just going to talk about it and make hand gestures so you understand what I'm talking about. When it comes down to increasing width in a shoe, we're actually increasing container volume, not actually the width of the shoe itself. Now, this is important to note because a lot of times, a lot of people that have like pressure on the little toe, maybe even like a wider, broader forefoot, but that have a very tapered, high, kind of thin arch, they find that like going up in volume ends up creating a scenario where, okay, the forefoot is comfortable, but all of a sudden I have a lot of play in the rest of the shoe. What I would do is look for a wider last. So remember, one of the first things we talked about in the session was shoe last. This is the mold that the shoe is designed on, and certain shoes are designed with naturally wider properties. This might be a means to kind of circumvent the issues surrounding volume while giving you space where you need it. In some of the images in my presentation, you probably noticed the shoe with the square-shaped toe box. This is a good way of getting width, like literal width in the base of the shoe without increasing volume and compromising the rest of the fit. So without knowing the full extent of your issues, I think that would be one starting point to consider. All right, Gilles Cote. Given the changes in the feet as we age, how often should one get a foot assessment? When it comes down to orthotics, so I'll use Podorthus as a reference. They recommend coming in and getting reassessed every 2 years. So sometimes that means getting new orthotics every 2 years. That's the textbook answer. When it comes down to the kind of assessments that we would give you, I think whenever you come in to buy shoes, I would have you come and do a measurement. I would remeasure. We would maybe redo the gait assessment. Doesn't take a very long time, but again, it helps us keep on top of any changes as they occur. Now, the measurement is not, and the measurement and the gait assessment are not where our services stop. Once we've kind of determined baseline measurements and numbers, what we'll typically do is start to fit you for the shoe. So we'll get the shoe on your feet. We'll also use a series of tactile checks to make sure that there is not excessive tension in certain areas. Typically I'm actually going to grab a shoe here for this. So when it comes to shoes, I'll typically press in where the big toe is to see exactly how much space we have. All right. And on top of that, we will also assess tension along the sides of the shoe to make sure that there isn't too much pressure or inversely too much space. Right. So as far as your assessments go, like these base services are available to you at any point whenever you come in to shop for shoes. Do you absolutely need to do them? No. However, it does not hurt. And I do think that it does provide a lot of new insights and can maybe address newer issues as they arise. Doreen Sarazin. What about corns on the side of the foot near the toes? So a lot of times corns, blisters, sometimes that's a fit issue with the shoe and it can result from stitches maybe that are lining the outside of the shoe. I'm not saying that's what it is for you, but sometimes that's one of the causes. And a lot of times like corns and blisters and all these things can form because of friction. And that honestly isn't always because the shoe is too big, but sometimes because the shoe is too small. So it could result from either crowding of the toes. So that comes back to the shoe last, shape of the toe box. But sometimes it could also just be the fact that like the shoe, it doesn't have enough volume to accommodate. And it could also be attributed to socks as well. So certain materials used in socks, especially cottons, when they don't dry very quickly, can create friction. Now, again, everything's kind of subjective, but those are some of the contributors to corns, blisters, including actually even blisters under the feet or corns under the feet. So sometimes what will happen is if we're in constrictive footwear, it'll constrict the feet to the point where the skin starts to bunch on the bottom, and it can create friction calluses. Again, and this is the misconception is that going wider is going to cause these problems, but sometimes going too tight can actually exacerbate these issues, mostly because the foot doesn't actually stop moving. It just crowds it more and creates pressure points or hot spots in the base of the foot. Gilles Cote, can I make an appointment with you to get an assessment prior to purchase of a product? You don't have to make appointments because we don't really have that robust of a system, if I'm being honest with you. It's kind of a walk in and we'll serve you as we can. But when it comes down to buying products, I would always suggest getting an assessment done before making a purchase. I think this is a good way of like ensuring that we put you in the best product possible, as well as keeping yourself informed. Is there footwear for anterior tibialis issues? How does that relate to the Achilles tendon? Anterior tibialis, I mean, I think that if you are experiencing, are we talking about to the bone or are we talking about to the musculature? Because there are a couple of different things. When it comes down to like bone, I mean, typically something with more absorbency would probably be helpful. If we're talking about the muscles as they wrap into the tibia around the forefoot, sometimes if a person has a really high arch and there's a lot of lateral weight distribution, it can actually cause inflammation in those insertion points. So maybe a more stable, broad base can help. How does that relate to the Achilles tendon? Sometimes the Achilles tendon might, I don't think the Achilles tendon itself is actually ever really a problem, typically, unless there's scar tissue buildup over time. But typically, it's going to come down to ankle mobility as a whole. So increasing ankle mobility typically is going to be good for addressing a lot of these issues. And I don't know if that's actually answering your question, but that is my best non-medical kind of assessment of that particular question. I would say a more stable base. If we want to alleviate pain, lift the heel a little bit more, but ultimately it's going to come down to mobilizing the ankle. Please say, anonymous attendee, please say a bit about what to look for in a walking shoe for walks 10 to 50 kilometers a day. My goodness gracious, that is a lot of mileage indeed. So typically what I would look for is, the first things first is ensuring the size is proper and ensuring that the design of the shoe addresses any kind of foot ailments we may have. So what is good for one person is not necessarily good for others. But typically what I'll recommend as a safe bet is a more thick kind of cushion base, especially at the heel, mostly because when we're typically walking more heel to toe. When it comes to running, there's a little bit of a difference. Some people tend to land a little bit more in the mid to forefoot. So, and that's mostly because during the kind of swing phase, there is a period where both feet are actually off the ground and running, and that doesn't happen when we're walking. Don't know too many people that walk on their forefoot, so I'm sure there are. No offense if you do, but it's not typically a thing. So typically I'd look for more buildup of cushioning at the heel. When you press around the back, so with cushioning here, if I press around the back here, I should feel more structure. I should feel something solid in here. And this is going to make sure the heel and the Achilles area is more stable. And then from that point, I would also look to make sure the shoe is stable in this midfoot region here. Oh, shoe's getting blurry. Midfoot region here. I typically do a light toe test, so I'll press gently on the toe and see exactly how far back the shoe flexes. If it flexes in the forefoot, it's okay. But if it flexes right in the middle of the arch, the shoe is probably lacking structure and may not provide you the support that you are looking for. Now, not everybody needs support like this, so I want to be very clear that this is not going to be a blanket statement for everybody. But if I'm being safe, I'm always going to prescribe more cushioning, a little bit more support, just to be on the safe side. How much time? I think I got like 4 minutes. Do you want me to end like bang on 10:40? I can do that. I don't want to take up too much time.
No, you're good. Keep going. These are great questions that everyone has for you.
There's a lot going on. Okay. All right. Did I lose my question here? Okay. All right. Chantal Leroux, Very informative. Thank you. Thank you, Chantal, for your question. This is very kind of you. I wear orthotics and I walk 7 kilometers on a daily basis. My shoes last 6 months. They are walking shoes, paid well over $200. Is there a shoe that could last longer? Oh, do you have a special shoe recommendation for this type of exercise? Here's the thing. When it comes to doing a lot of mileage, 6 months, this is going to suck. This is a horrible answer. You're going to hate me for this, but 6 months is typically the duration. Now, I'm very much of the mind that if you find a shoe that after 6 months you're still comfortable walking your 7 kilometers a day, and keep on going with it. But a lot of people have these little tells, these little aching, nagging feelings that creep up when their shoes are worn down. Unfortunately, in order to kind of mitigate the increase in weight, foam compounds have to be a certain density. So also this is for comfort purposes as well, because of the higher density, the foam, the more stable the shoe is, however, the less comfortable it can be, especially for your long walks. It depends on what you feel is wearing out in the shoe. Certain shoes, like running, walking shoes, will use like thinner rubber layers here on the base. They'll usually use high wear components on the outside of the heel and on the forefoot area of the shoe to kind of increase abrasion resistance at those areas. But and you could go to a shoe that has a more durable rubber compound, so something like Vibram rubber. Maybe I know some shoe brands work with tire companies like Continental, Goodyear. Those rubbers can be quite a bit more durable. But if we're talking about the wear out of the cushioning, so basically cushioning no longer absorbing adequately because it's been completely compressed, you could try going to a shoe with a higher density foam, but typically we expect 6 months to at most a year when it comes to our shoes, especially if it's something that we're using every single day. New Balance does make 2 models that are interesting. They're not cheap, but they are quite durable. One would be the New Balance 928. The other would be the New Balance 857. They use higher density foam compounds, so you don't get as much squish, but you get a little bit more stability, and typically the foam doesn't pack down as easily. So those are 2 recommendations we could look into. But if you want, maybe give us a call and I can go into a bit more detail, because I think that's about as much as I can answer. Going on walking tour of outer the senior hiking boots with ankle support or walking shoes. Marsha. I'm not familiar with the terrain which you're traversing, but it does sound like a more technical kind of trail terrain. When it comes down to trail shoes, you're going to be getting a stickier rubber compound that is more durable. That's number one thing. So we think about stability from like height on the ankle or where the shoe wraps up the ankle. Truthfully, stability also is important from, first of all, making sure that the foams are not too squishy, not compressing too much and creating instability, but that we have good grip on the base. This is going to come down to the stickiness of the rubber. So a hiking shoe, I think it sounds like it would be the better option, because it sounds like you're going off-road and will be kind of traversing some unstable terrains. But again, I probably need a bit more detail and understanding of the terrain before making a formal recommendation. But I think I would go towards hiking boots at that point. What about hammer toe? Hammer toe, we want depth in the toe box. This is going to come down to the shoe's last and how deep that toe box is going to fit. A lot of straight lasts tend to be designed with a deeper toe box. This will reduce pressure. Also, you could inversely go to a regular shoe and go with a wider width, which would increase the container volume. Now, I think, Michelle, I'm at like 10:40. I think this is about your time. I am sorry I can't answer more questions. But yeah. I don't want to.
That was awesome, Nathan. So much information, and it's definitely made me reconsider some shoe choices that I have made in the past.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, that's so good. And I'm sure that everyone has gotten some kind of information that they can pull away from this going forward and being like, things to consider from here on in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry I couldn't answer all the questions, and thanks for having me. I think this was a lot of fun. I don't know, Michelle and Antoine, if you want to just like send out the phone number and they can just call and ask questions, like I can answer any follow-up questions they may have over the phone, or if they want to come visit us, you can send them an address. But yeah, I've already taken up a minute of your workout time. I don't want to do that. So
that's all good. Well, thank you so much. Yes, we will incorporate in their newsletter your address for Sports 4 at College Square and the phone number. So everyone will have that option if they want to talk to you more, or if they just want to find out your hours and stuff.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thanks for having me. Sorry I couldn't answer the rest of the questions. I hope you have a great workout. Enjoy.
Thank you. All right, everybody. So we have been sitting down for a little bit, listening to the wonderful talk from Nathan. But now I want you to get up, wiggle around a little bit, and we're going to do some exercises specifically for you today for walking or running and stretching and whatnot. So if you do have a mini band, I will grab mine. Something's like a little band. Grab it, and we will use that. All right. So first, if you have a chair, keep that handy too, because we will use those as well. If you have balance issues and you need something to kind of hold on to, just grab it and have it close by. So all we're going to do right now is just a nice, easy heel raise. Just getting up and down. So the reason why we're doing this is shin and calves and warming up the ankles. So just nice and easy, up and down. Perfect. If this is something that you already do before you go for a walk or after you come home, you can always do an option with going to a stair and standing on the lower level stair, the bottom stair, and making sure your heels fall below the stair. So then you're going to get really into your calves, and you're going to feel it even into the like lower section of your bum, because everything is all connected. So you're really going to get that big stretch. So we're just going to keep going here. So walking, running, traversing through, hiking through forests and whatnot that you might be doing. Quads, your legs are very important to make sure they're stable, strong, and able to do your whatever you're doing. So with that being said, I want us to, if you have a chair, to sit on your chair right on the edge, and you can have your hands on your hips, and I just want you to stand nice and tall and sit back down. Standing up and sitting back down. So this is something functional fitness that we do every day. We sit up and we stand up. We sit down and we stand up every day. We go to the bathroom, we go to the couch, we go to the dinner table, we go into the car. These are things that we should be doing fairly easily if you're nice and mobile. If not, make sure you practice them with your chair. Okay, so that's something that you can do every day. You can do 10 to 20 of these per day. If you're more mobile, you don't need the chair. Just move the chair out of the way and continue to do your squat. Just nice and easy. Okay. Standing, hip hinging, pushing your hips back and coming forward. What most of us do, if we're not really doing a squat properly, we tend to keep everything in, and we try to keep everything going down laterally, just nice and straight. That's not a squat. We want to make sure those hips push back. Your knees are doing the bending. Your heels are staying on the floor. You're solid. Your core is tight. Your glutes are getting that workout. Okay. So if you see or you find that you're kind of nice and narrow, your knees are going way over your knees. Sorry, your knees are going way over your toes, and you're trying to do it and your heels are coming up. Try to reassess yourself. Say, no, I need to go wide. I need to be able to see my toes at all points. I need to hip hinge, push my hips and my bum back, and be able to almost touch your toes. Like that is a good squat. When you know that you can see your toes the whole way down, you're not hiding them. Okay. So try to do a couple of those every day. It doesn't take long. Something you can do if you're going to the breakfast table, let's say, and you're like, okay, my breakfast is ready, looks delicious, I'm ready to eat, I'm gonna sit down. And you sit down. Say, no, before I start eating, I'm gonna do 5 more squats. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I can sit down and have my breakfast. You can do the same thing at lunch. You can do the same thing at dinner. It took maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5 seconds for you to do those. You got 5 squats done, easy peasy. Now, if you want to increase it a little more, you can use a band. Putting the band around your thighs, you're going to increase the width of your legs, so your band is now under tension, and you're going to continue to do your squat. So you're going to push down and come up. So again, I'll go sideways. So you're seeing my bum goes far, far, far back, and I stand back up. It's going down and coming back up. It's going down and coming back up. So this is just to create a little bit more resistance on your legs to get them stronger for your walk. All right, we are going to take our chair now. We are going to take our band. You're just going to loop the band over the front or the tops of your foot and under the arches of your foot. You are going to sit all the way back in your chair, nice and tall. You're going to keep your core tight. You're going to keep one foot flat on the floor while you lift the other one. So now you have the tension of the band as you squeeze that quad and that hamstring into the chair. You're going to extend that leg. Good. You can really feel, if you put your hands on your quad, you can really feel the muscle tension happening, strengthening that muscle. So when you go for your walk, you will have it's more than just strength, but you'll have the endurance for your walk. Your legs won't get as tired. All right, so remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. You might find that one side is stronger, more flexible than the other side. That's okay. But it's something for you to notice and maybe work a little bit more on that one side so it can get strong like the other side. Good. You might feel the quivering happening in the quad as you're doing this, something that we don't do very often. Good. So just waking up those muscles. Excellent. Now, while we're sitting here, we can do our hips and our outside, our adductors and our abductors. You're just going to keep that band wrapped around your ankles, lifting them off the floor and opening up your legs together. So if you put your hands now on your hips, you're going to feel the movement happening through the hips. And if you put your hands in the front of your hips, you'll feel the hip flexors are working at the same time. Okay, so if you find, again, you have one side more strong than the other, then isolate it and do one side at a time. Keep that other leg straight and not moving, and then move one, and then switch, moving the one side and not the other one. And then you can always come back in and do both together. Okay, it's nice to be able to recognize when we have a difference in strength, in mobility, in flexibility on one side to the other. Good, you should also be feeling this in your glutes as you're pulling out. Good. Excellent. All right, we're going to stand up. We're still going to keep our chair. We're going to keep the band, but we're just going to slip it now underneath our arches. So it's on the top of our foot and on the bottom of our arches. You can hold on to your chair for stability if you need to, or you can put your hands on your hips, whatever suits you best. And I'm just going to turn my chair. You're going to lift and tap. Lift and tap. So balance is happening here. We're keeping our core tight. We're stabilizing through our legs and our hips as we come up, tap the chair, and come down. Come up and down. So with the band creates resistance, making it harder for our leg to figure out how much energy do I need to use to get that leg and that hip up to tap that chair. So when you're walking, it's going to be easier because you're not going to have that resistance, but it's going to help with your pace and your gait as well as your endurance, because this is tiring. When you're walking, you don't have that resistance. So like everything, we have to make sure we do the other side. So I like to swing my arms because I find just kind of mimics that movement when you're walking. When we're walking, we want to make sure we don't have our hands just by our side. We want to swing them, creating a nice, good flow. If you have your walking sticks, they are very helpful too. But just tapping, going down and coming back, up and down. Good. So if it tends to be a rainy day and you're like, oh, I was going to go for a walk today, do this instead. You might not get the distance, but you're still going to get the workout. You're still going to burn those calories. Good. Now we can get rid of the band and we'll move our chair out of the way. We want to make sure we have not only forward motion, like Nathan was saying, we tend to do everything forward. So our shoes, as long as they're good for going forward, that's what we need. But we want to move side to side at the same time. So we want to make sure that our hips have the flexibility to go in all range of motions. We don't know what's going to happen on our walk. There might be a squirrel that pops out and you have to jump to the side. Something, a barrier, a puddle, something could be there. So we want to make sure that we can flex our knee and laterally slide to the side. So we just want to practice a side lunge. So again, your hips are going back, you're pushing, and you're switching sides. My back stays flat, my core is tight, my hips don't really move. All that's happening is my weight is shifted from side to the other side. But my hips are hip hinged forward, and I'm just switching side to side, okay? So this is good for flexibility. You're gonna start to feel that on the inner thigh. Good. So we also want to be able to stretch. So we can do our stretch where we go down. We can touch our foot and extend that leg. And we can come to the center and do the same thing on the other side. Feeling that stretch all through the inner thigh. You can, release it and come back. Release it and come back. Good. We're gonna come back. So if you go for a long walk and you've come home and you're like, okay, my walk is done, I need to stop. No, you need to stretch your body. You need to stretch everything that has just stopped. It's like when you do an exercise class, we always do a cool down. Why? Because it's a shock to our system to just stop and just be like, okay, did it, I'm done. So a really good stretch, if you have a wall, is put your foot, your toes up the side of the wall. Hopefully you guys can see that. My heel is on the floor, but my toes are on the wall. From this point, you're going to either use the back foot, push your hips forward, and really bring it in to the wall. Try to get those hips touching that wall. You're going to feel that through the calf, right up to your back of your knee. Okay, remember you always do both sides. Even if you don't find that you have any pain, I just kind of keep bringing that foot in the back a little bit forward, trying to really push my hips into the wall. I'm not arching backward. You really feel that calf stretch. Good. And then you shake it out. Remember to rotate your ankles. A lot of people, when they start walking, they haven't done any of these stretches. These stretches that I'm doing right now can be done before and after your walk, okay? We tend to just go and stop. So when we go, if you notice that your ankles roll a little bit, you're kind of like, oh, my ankle did a funny thing right there. And it takes a few steps and it kind of works itself out. Had you rotated your ankles before you started, it probably would not have happened, okay? So make sure you rotate your ankles in both directions. And if you find that your ankles are tight and they're not able to rotate very well, sit on a chair and use your hand to force that rotation. Your ankle should be able to go in a big circle. So both ways, one way, then the other. Then another really good stretch is our hip flexors. So we're going to lean forward. You can do this on a chair. You can do this on a bench. You can do this on your outside stoop, wherever before you start, and just push your hips forward, bend the knee, and just feel that stretch right in the groin, right in the hip flexor. It wraps right around. Feels so good. And then at the same time, you're in the same position, we're going to go and we're going to do our hamstrings, feeling that in the back of our leg. Just lean forward. Again, you can do this on your stoop, on the step outside, on a bench, on a curb. It doesn't matter. Good. And what we do to one side, we always remember to do to the other. So again, get that hip flexor, just leaning forward, pushing your hips forward, flipping the foot for the hamstring, and then just lean forward. Good. So we have gotten calves, we have gotten hamstrings, we've gotten hip flexors. Let's get the quads. So bring that leg up behind you, pulling it in, but in the front, I want you to remember to bring knees together and bring those hips and push them forward. Now, I understand a lot of us might not be able to get our leg to that position. So use a band. Put your foot through the band, bring it up behind you, and use the band to help pull. As long as you remember knees together and hips forward, you're still going to get the same effect. That stretch is still going to get into that quad. All right. I hope that was good for you guys. Does anyone have any questions before we sign off for this webinar today? It was fast. We had a lot going on. Let's see if I can see anything in the chat. I see nothing in the chat. For me, they were all Nathan questions. Antoine, do you see anything?
I'm seeing just one question in the Q&A saying, where can I get an excellent quality band and how do I know the proper resistance?
All right. Well, lucky for you guys, I don't know if you know this, AIM Fitness, we have our own bands. So we have a pack of 5. So it goes from light to heavy. We sell them. You can contact us. We can email, we can mail them to you. If you're in the city, I could probably drop them off to you wherever you are. So visit us at www.activitiesinmotion.ca and you can request, you can go online, you can send us a quick email and we will get back to you and have that order all done for you. I'm trying to think of the price. I believe they're $40 for a pack of 5.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we just have one final comment saying that they loved the stretches, and they'll take them on their holiday.
Excellent. That's the most important. And these are things that you guys can do anytime, anywhere. You don't need anything. It's just remembering them. That's the hardest part.
All right, so we're just over our time, so I think now's a good time to stop. So I just have some final notes here. Firstly, thank you everyone for your participation in today's webinar, and a big thank you to Michelle and to Nathan for today's excellent session. And we will be sending out a follow-up email later today, and it will include the webinar, the recording for today's webinar if you want to watch it on your own time, and it'll include information on AIM Fitness and Sports4. So if you need to contact them or learn any additional information. Finally, you can invite non-members to try these webinars out as guests. So if you'd like to register you or your guests for any upcoming webinars, please check out our Ottawa branch website at nafrottawa.com. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at our next webinar. Bye-bye.